Welcome back to the Make It Make Sense podcast, where we discuss legal issues in a way that's easy to understand and apply. I'm your host, Yeside Asolo, and with me are my lovely co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Kolade Shofola.
Hi, I'm Sekir Mohammed.
So we hope that you were with us on our last podcast, where we talked about protecting your talent in the creative industry, a guide for music creatives. Today, we'll be talking about film creatives. We'll be dissecting legal issues, real cases, and arming you with the knowledge you need to tackle the Nigerian film industry.
But first, just a short overview of the Nigerian film industry. The African entertainment industry itself has been growing tremendously thanks to resurgence for African creative content. And Nigeria's film and entertainment industry has been leading the pack, standing at a market size of over $6 billion, and is predicted to rise to over $14 billion this year.
Wow, that is a lot of money.
Yep, it's a lot of money. But when you think about the number of people involved in making films, the actors, actresses, directors, cinematographers, not to mention the producers and everyone else behind the scenes, it's not hard to imagine why there's so much money involved in movie making.
Yeah, Kolade, you're right. That's a lot of people. So now, let's look at some of the key cast and crew. We have the actors and actresses, obviously the lovely people that we see on screen. We have the producers and executive producers. They are the visionaries securing funding, managing budgets, and overseeing the entire production process. We have directors, the creative minds shaping the story, guiding the actors, and overseeing visual execution. We also have the screenwriters. They are very important. They are the architects of compelling plots and dialogues. And we have the cinematographers or director of photography, the artist behind the camera, crafting the visual tone of the film that we see on screen. We also have other stakeholders such as the production designers, set decorators, editors, makeup artists, costume, the list goes on and on.
Wow, so that is a lot of people working behind the scenes, and more importantly, that's a lot of stakeholders who need to sign legal agreements and get paid. But yesterday, there are a couple of people after the movie has ended, and I've never really understood who they are: the grip and the gaffer.
Okay, I went to check.
Okay.
Grip is a technician who sets up and maintains equipment that supports the camera, while the gaffer is the chief lighting technician. So it's a phonetic reduction of Godfather, as they were usually the old man on set. So similar application in football to the gaffer, who is the manager.
Interesting. Learn something new.
Yes, you have.
And with these number of people working behind the scenes and making these movies, it's pretty clear that Nollywood has come a long way, right?
We have.
I mean, back in the day, it just seems like it was one guy with one camera making a whole movie. But now, things have changed. Movies like Karishika, Neka and the Pretty Serpents and all of those back then, they didn't seem like they had grips and gaffers and cinematographers
No,
and all of
they didn't.
that.
Absolutely. It's been incredible to witness this transformation from the days of classic VHS tapes to the era of digital streaming. The industry has evolved in leaps and bounds, and it's not just about production quality. There's also been a major shift in how stories are told, with deeper characters, developments, and more diverse narratives. Take King of Boys, for example. The depth of storytelling, cinematography set a new standard for Nollywood. It is exciting to see how filmmakers continue to push the boundaries.
Yeah, and there's a sequel coming out in December of King of Boys.
Oh, wow. Got to see that.
Yes, definitely.
So the film production process can be divided into 5 parts: the development stage, the pre-production stage, the production stage, the post-production stage, and then you have the distribution and the exhibition stage. That's a good way of thinking about it. It's a good framework to think about the whole film production process. Now, the development stage, this is where it all starts: the story, the financing, and the vision. And at this stage, it's very important to secure all of the intellectual property rights that you need to. So, for instance, a producer may negotiate an options agreement with an author to acquire the rights from that author to a script or book. And if the film is based on a real person, then you can secure like a life rights agreement. When the producer himself or herself has an original idea, then he needs to get it turned into a script. So you can have a writer's agreement with the script writer to turn that script into a Bible. And that Bible is what you now use to help you raise financing. Now, between the producers, you have what is called like a co-production agreement. And that's where you clarify the roles of the producers and you sort of discuss, agree the terms of sharing revenue. And above all, everyone needs to sign NDAs. Very important.
That's true. No film without money.
Nope.
So film creatives need to do certain steps. Well, they need to take certain steps at this point. First of all, you need to make sure all agreements are signed and executed, and then register the script with the NCC. So now let's take a look at a case study or a real life example. So in 2017, Judy Dada and Chioma Onyekwe of Rankater Productions, they filed a copyright infringement lawsuit against Omoni Oboli and her production company for copyright infringement of the feature film Okafor's Law.
Okafor's Law? Is that the same Okafor's Law that I've heard about?
Yes, the very same one.
Yeah, so the Federal High Court issued an injunction stopping the initial premiere of the movie, but the interim injunction was later lifted and the movie premiered. In 2019, the Federal High Court ruled in favor of Omoni Oboli that the plaintiffs had failed to adduce sufficient and credible evidence to prove ownership and authorship of the screenplay, and the Okafor's Law case was dismissed. So what's the takeaway?
Always have written and executed contracts for all the work you create for others. Can't underestimate the power of contracts.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's talk about another issue, a topical issue, true life stories. So the general rule under Nigerian law is you cannot copyright your life or true life story of somebody. So the narration of the person's life is just a historical event. As long as there's no defamation in that narration, you can't protect it with any intellectual property. So no copyright, no patent or trademarks. Now, Kolade, I've just been thinking that as lawyers, we should probably take this up or investigate this further, because why can't I copyright my life? It's personal to me.
I know.
My life.
I know. It seems wrong that someone can do a movie and make money off your own life story, and you're the actor in your own movie, right?
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's just a historical event. It's a public fact. What all the things that you did.
Okay, so Sikri, what do you think about this?
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, and it makes me think about biopics, especially films like the Wole Soyinka's movie or Eniogun. These films are based on real people and events, yet they also involve creative interpretations, while the facts of their lives aren't protected by IP's law. The way their stories are told, the script, cinematography, direction, definitely are. This is where filmmakers have to strike a balance between staying true to history and adding cinematic elements to making it engaging.
That's correct. So now let's move to the second stage from the list that we mentioned earlier, which is pre-production stage. Now this is where the film moves from idea to execution. This stage is a bit contract heavy because this is where all the agreements with all the stakeholders are negotiated and executed. So you have your agreements with your actors, the director of cinematography, and all the other people generally involved in the film production process. You'd also need a location release agreement. This will get you permission to use locations to film. And where there are brands featured in the movie, for instance, the soda bottle, this is where you'll have your production placement agreement signed. Where there's music, your music licensing agreement. And let's not forget insurance. There needs to be insurance just in case there's any mishap on set. So now, a real life example of where, some safety precautions should have been taken is Junior Pope. This was quite sad. He drowned on the canoe they were in. Well, he fell off the canoe and drowned when they were on their way to film, on their way to set. So that was quite a sad incident. But I'm sure if there was insurance and other safety measures had been taken, this would not have happened.
Yeah, that's quite a sad story. Ruth Kadiri was also given a similar account, and she said that incidents like the one that sadly killed Junior Pope were far too common in Nollywood. In her own experience, they went to shoot a movie as well. I guess they were shooting a movie on water or something, and they said she couldn't use a life jacket, and that's how her canoe that they were in tumbled into the water, and she had to be saved by one of her colleagues that grabbed her. So, I mean, these kind of cases, show the devastating consequences of a lack of investment in safety and not mitigating risk with insurance and protecting against potential liabilities for the cast, the crew, and even the directors.
Okay, so after pre-production stage, we hit the production part. This is where the actual filming of the movie takes place. So all the legal groundwork for all the agreements that have been executed prior, this is where it all pays off. You may also need on-set release forms. This is to protect against disputes over people who just appear in the background, or as they say, waka pass.
Exactly. And during production, organization is key. The director, cinematographer, and crew work together to bring the script to life, making sure every shot is executed as planned, plus daily call sheets, keep everyone on schedule, while continuity supervisors ensure consistency from scene to scene. It's a fast-paced environment, but with solid preparation, everything runs smoothly.
Okay, so now after the production stage, we hit post-production. So this is where the magic happens. Now, this stage is not to be ignored because it could make or break the film. So this is where editors put together all the scenes to weave the story together perfectly. Now, this part also includes third-party clearances like music, artwork, fonts. So these agreements all need to be negotiated and executed at this point to prevent any disputes upon release of the movie.
Yes, agreement to consider here are editing, sound designs, and special effects. Key legal consideration includes synchronization and master use agreements. These ensure the right to use music in films. Post-production agreements. These are agreements of the rules of editor and special effects teams. Font use and art clearance agreements. This prevents copyright infringement issues.
Oh, wow. So you mean you actually need to get copyright clearance for the use of a font?
Yes, you do.
You do.
That's quite intricate.
So we also have service level agreements. These define the quality, timeline, and responsibility of service providers handling editing, visual effects, that's VFX, and sound designs, and other critical finishing processes.
So the last but not the least stage in the movie production process is the distribution and exhibition stage. And this is where the end users, you and me, get to see the finished product of months and months of hard work. So the film could be shown at a cinema or on streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, or etc. And at this point, the production company or producer weighs its options, except where maybe a commissioning broadcaster was involved from the start, like Netflix, for instance. At the distribution stage of filmmaking, you have the distribution agreements and the license agreements. And these are both critical for getting the films to the audiences. With the distribution agreement, you have a contract between the filmmaker or a production company and a distributor. And this outlines the terms under which the distributor will market, promote, and distribute the film. It defines how and where the films will be released and how box office earnings, streaming royalties, or sales will be shared. It also specifies how advertising trailers and promotional campaigns will be done. With the license agreement, this grants a third party like a broadcaster or streaming platform the right to show, stream, or sell the film in exchange for a fee or revenue share, and also determines whether multiple platforms can license the film at the same time. Both of these agreements sort of make sure that the movie reaches the audience in a way that's both legally sound and also profitable for all the parties involved in the making of the movie.
Now that we have discussed, the filmmaking process and all the stages, now let's talk about intellectual property in film and its protection. So we hope that you listened to our last podcast, and if you didn't, please go back and listen, where we discussed issues like copyright, licensing, royalties, and just issues around intellectual property. Now, in filmmaking, those concepts still equally apply. So copyright protects original works like scripts, films, and the music of film. Now, let's talk a little bit about protecting screenplays. So in order to safeguard screenplays, filmmakers should document their work, register your script with the NCC, and also join screenwriters associations or film writers associations, which is a good community for legal support and help. Now, second thing is piracy. Now, this is a really, really big issue and causes financial and reputational harm. So imagine you've worked hard to create this movie and then it's being showed illegally on some website or being hawked on the streets. Remember the days of those films in Alaba Market, right?
I remember those days.
Everything.
I may or may not have bought a lot of those CDs too.
We might have been implicit in it, but yeah. So I mean, there are a number of ways to tackle this. I mean, I think it's a combination of ways. So legal, technological, and community-based strategies, to tackle things like piracy. So first of all, the legal strategies, you need to leverage on the Nigerian Copyright Act 2022, and collaborate with law enforcement, typically to bring actions against these infringers, and also sometimes in conjunction with law enforcement, they do carry out routine raids of all these places where illegal reproductions of movies are sold or perpetrated.
Yeah, the piracy operation.
Exactly. So an example of a filmmaker and an actor taking legal action is Femi Adebayo, the producer of Seven Doors. He had a movie called Survival of Jelili, which was being pirated by a YouTube channel. So he took them to court, and in 2024, the Federal High Court delivered judgment in his favor, awarding him damages in the sum of 25 million. So, I mean, it might take a long time, but there are legal, you can take them to court. So this is a legal strategy to combat piracy.
Yeah, and apart from the legal strategy, there are a couple of other things you can do as well. So, for instance, you can leverage on technology. There are things such as watermarking, where you can embed visible or invisible watermarks inside the film so that the source of the pirating or the pirated copies can be traced. Or you can use encryption. Encryption technologies protect the digital content during their distribution and storage. It's also closely related to new technologies such as blockchain. And also you can use secure distribution platforms with trusted digital platforms that have robust anti-piracy measures. Another way is to engage the community, do public campaigns and launch campaigns to encourage the audience to support legitimate content and report piracy. Because if the movie makers and the actors are not paid, then you're not going to get the movies you want to watch. They're not going to get made if they're not going to see any profit from it. Also, you can put rewards for reporting, whistleblowing, and offer incentives to individuals who report piracy activities and lead to the arrest of pirates.
Yeah, that is true. I think a community-based approach might actually be best, so that we can also develop our creative sector. Because if all their work is undermined, it doesn't really encourage them to continue.
There's no incentive.
Yeah, exactly, to continue in this line of work. Okay, so all of this IP gives creators the exclusive rights to use, distribute, and profit from their creations. Trademarks also protect production company names, logos, and film titles when they're registered with the Nigerian Trademarks, Patent and Design Industry and Designs Registry to prevent unauthorized use.
So thank you for listening to our Make It Make Sense podcast. We hope that today's podcast has added some value and you've learned something new. Until next time, thank you for your interest in the law. Take care and have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.